Well, hello there, everyone. You show you right here is like the Denny's, your Denny's, 12 years right here. And you see right here is I went ahead and put together right here. This right here will be an example of one of the guys like on from one of those old Denny's commercials. So if anybody were to know about, for any, thing about, for Denny's, if it's going to be what you calls like for anything on the menu. And I know that they could buy have right here is like a, it's like with the it's like with the spelling, but on your hand, like anything, these right here will be some examples right here of what we would see on the menu, such as your fried chicken, as like chicken noodle soup, your specials as well as the coleslaw and salads, pancakes and eggs, and then holiday hour. But as well as it could also maybe be for like maybe if it's going to be busting tables or if it's your dishwasher or anything like that. But I can remember a couple of times that whenever I look at the commercials, though, that thinking about is to where I have right here is the moon right here. But sometimes if I were to be recording one of those TV shows that was a couple of years ago, that would have been about early of 1997. And I was also thinking about as to where that, yeah, those Denny's commercials that sometimes between the hours of 1, 2, and maybe 3 o'clock in the morning, especially on a Saturday night, like this night, is that take a bus to where like on a Saturday or Sunday, early Sunday morning, that I would see a lot of these commercials. And I don't know anybody that may weren't. Or back in that time, that of course I was still in school, but usually that on the weekends to be able to stay up late night hours. But a lot of times that you would see commercials like that about maybe Denny's or maybe Bob Evans or any restaurant commercials that would advertise about anything anything about specials or anything like that on the menu. It's like come on by for a nice meal or something like that. But I'm sure most of us can remember it's like for any of the guys that they it's like the guy that it's like would appear on those Denny's commercials, and it's like a bucket of fish eggs or something like that. You're like a $300 or pound or something. But it's like they said that you only pay so much for it, but then you can tell your friends that you paid a lot more for it. I guess is basically what the commercial said. So you're like Warrentor whenever you look at these commercials that some of them are even the old commercials especially. And for about over 12 years, like with anybody, that they will be going to the Denny's restaurant maybe for their anniversary or something like that, some day like that, and thinking that they want to go in there and get a nice meal or something like that. But sometimes though that like with anybody, if they will be going into the restaurant and then you're like, Warren Tor, why do you think that customers would be going into the restaurant between the hours of 11:30 and maybe 5:30 a.m. Just to be able to get something warm to eat, or maybe a bowl of soup, or and I know like with anybody that if you were to go into a restaurant, and especially if you've been sick, maybe with the cold or the flu, and I know like with anybody that if they walk into a restaurant, especially on the days if they don't feel very well, they've had a headache or something, and they sometimes when they walk into a restaurant that sometimes that the food that may smell good, but then on their hand that they may be what you call dealing with like what you call like sinus headache or anything like that. So if anybody wonders, they may have seen those commercials, maybe like the Applebee's commercials, but then like say for like the Denny's commercials, as to where if you walk into a restaurant, especially if you've been sick, those past 2 or 3 days, and thinking about you go in there for maybe for a nice hot bowl of soup, and then something to help you is like with your appetizer, if you want an appetizer or something like that. So thinking about is to where that whenever I know like with anybody, whenever you're sick, that you don't really have a habit and an appetite for really too much food, other than maybe for like soups or anything like that, or anything that's what you call really to like small. You just eat small items such as like maybe if you want maybe some pancakes or maybe fried eggs, or if you want anything about like they say that yeah, like if you go in there maybe for a milkshake or something like that. So maybe for like breakfast related, but still that sometimes when we go into a restaurant that we weren't, to where that if you walk into a restaurant that if you haven't been feeling very good, and as well as like for any appetizers, or think about it's like the restaurant knowing about you for family and friends, to be welcome to, is to where if you have a group about maybe 8 or 12 people or so, and I know, like well, for any restaurant that you walk in there, especially like on Father's Day or any other type of holiday, and you're like thinking about it, as to where that you go into the restaurant and people who do have coupons and people who may have heard about as like a special on the menu, or maybe a restaurant that they were driving through town, and so they decided to stop into the restaurant. So if anybody warns us to where a lot of times Denny's restaurant, as well as like for Bob Evans restaurant, as well as any other restaurant, quite a few of them that will be located near, it's like the interstate highways. So if they want to come in to a restaurant, like maybe TA's or any restaurant like that, Applebee's, and they want to go in there for a meal, and if it's eat all what you can eat or so, and any item, any type of menus like that, and think about as to where that especially online too. And I know like anybody that may want to, or how does online basically work? But back in like 1997 though, that I can remember seeing these commercials a lot of times whenever I was young, and I can remember that seeing them on TV, and I kept thinking about maybe the parents would like say mom or dad or anybody like that, any cousins or aunts or uncles would maybe want to where that have some of those commercials and look back at them and thinking of if somebody that used to work there, or if it was anything about maybe somebody for a promotion or anything like that, or anything related to like for 12 years seems like a long time or so, and like thinking about as to where be working at a restaurant and knowing about ways to celebrate too, and I can remember like Denny's though, that Denny's I guess has been a restaurant since about 1977, some year like that, maybe since 1981. But I can remember seeing that commercials since 1994, and it was like a lot of times those commercials came on at late night hours, and I mean people may think about us to where look at those commercials and thinking about that you go in there, you go into the restaurant, and then you say if you want to say leave happy or something like that. And I know compared to those blockbuster or commercials, though, it's like you go in there and rent a movie and then leave happy or so. But then whenever you walk into Denny's restaurant, and you're like wanting to where like a type of restaurant to where that they have like say the foods, and I know like with anybody that if they were to do it, remember a lot of the stuff about from whenever that they banned smoking at your area. So it's like whenever you walk into a restaurant, that they may have some areas of the restaurant where they say that non-smoking, and I know a few restaurants that they say that they don't have too many of those smoking areas too much anymore. So it's like think about how they arrange that, but you see right here, it's like for Denny's online, and I know with me though, with like any of my web designing work, and think about anybody that may want to, or that especially like late night hours, is that to have customers that they go in online, find out about anything special on the menu, or anybody that may want to, where for like anything related to like putting together a menu right here. You have right here is like the way of how that like you have right here the barbecue ribs, and then they could have like maybe about 12 pounds or something like 12 ounces or something like that for how they serve it, and there's like for for ways of how you want it cooked, and there's all those other details right here on the menu. But yeah, and I know like with anybody, whenever you walk into a restaurant, that waiter or waitress that may take your drink order first, and then they give you about 2 or 3 minutes, and whenever you're ready to whenever they're ready to place an order as well. But I can remember that anybody like wanted to, or it may take about maybe 5 or 10 minutes for you to decide about what you want, because you go into a restaurant, you could be with somebody that you haven't seen in a very long time. So while you're at the restaurant, you start talking to them, and you're like saying about the waiter or waitress that's going to come back and say, are you all ready to order now? So kind of reminds me of maybe one of those Geico commercials. But anyway, but talk about here for like Denny's though, right here, that I a lot of times wondered to where that why is it that a lot of those commercials would come on between the hours of maybe between 11:30, 12 o'clock, maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I used to always think as to where really I'm like who would I don't even know if there's any restaurants even open around this time of night. Because I can remember I used to always think that, especially if the moon was out, and you're like Warren, to where that for anybody like radio stations that between 12 and 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you would think that a lot of people would be asleep. But then thinking that well, there are people that more likely that would get up and around that time in the morning and want to go to a restaurant and get a nice meal or so, and especially if it's not going to be so hot outside, and if it's around summertime, between 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, it can only be about maybe in the 60s outside, and you're like Warren, to where that they're if they were only about maybe 2 or 3 miles away, then they would maybe want to drive to a restaurant, especially, or if they may say that they know somebody who works there, especially. So think about as to a number of things about how we want to say about the pick site for the restaurant. But other than that, like talk about May 25. Denny's 12 years. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.